A big good evening, everybody, and welcome to Radcliffe Bars at the Crown Oil Arena, both to everyone who is in the room with us tonight and, of course, to everyone who is watching at home. Before we introduce you to our top table and get on with the evening, first of all, welcome to everyone that's at home. Obviously, we are live on the club's YouTube channel. If there is any technical problems tonight, bear with us and we will get back to you straight away. And to everyone who's with us in the room tonight, obviously, of course, it is live at home. There could be children watching, so please refrain from any bad language because there's cameras all around the room. If you could, thank you. So tonight, the order of events tonight, I'll introduce you to the top table in a minute. You'll get the chance to ask questions, obviously, to a couple of new board directors, our new chairman, and of course, our new manager as well. The way the night is going to work tonight is, first of all, we're going to ask any questions to the manager that you may have. I'm going to sweep the room like I would do normally when we're upstairs, so I'll come to each table individually. So if you do have any questions, please ask that question as I'm at your table. So the first time I sweep the room, we're going to ask questions for the manager. The second time I sweep the room will be for the board, and then the third part of the evening will be for anyone who's asking questions from at home. So if you are watching from at home, if you've got any questions, please send them in via the Rochdale Football Club Twitter account or via email at media@rochdaleafc.co.uk. And if you are going to send questions in tonight, please give us your full name so that we can acknowledge you for them questions as well. One other thing as well is you'll notice the trust table is at the back of the room. Col and Bob are over there. So if there's anyone in the room tonight who hasn't yet joined the trust, please do. Just over there near the big board, there's your chance to join the trust tonight if you haven't already. So the first thing I'd like to do is introduce you to the top table. We'll start from left to right. Number one, our first guest tonight, our director, Jamie Sarsfield. Next to Jamie is a new another member of the board. He's the Supporters Trust elected director, Murray Knight. Next to Murray is a man who was appointed manager of Rochdale Football Club last month on a 2-year deal. Will you please join me in welcoming to Rochdale Football Club our manager, Robbie Stockdale. Next to Robbie is our chairman, Mr. Simon Gage. And I think Simon would like to say a few words now, would you, if possible, please?
I'd just like to copy what Dave said, really, and thank everyone for coming along this evening. Obviously, it's some of us here's first fans forum. I understand they're usually quiet affairs with not too much going on. And I'm sure it'll be the same this evening with the nice quiet summer that we've had at the club. So we look forward to trying to explain a little bit about what's going on and keeping you updated with everything throughout the evening. So, yeah, I just want to say thanks very much for coming along this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next to Simon is another director, another one of our directors, Tony Pockney. And last but by no means least, another one of our new directors to the board, Mr. Richard Knight. Okay, so without further ado, we are going to get on with the questions. I'll repeat myself once again. The first set of questions is going to be solely for the manager of the club. The second set of questions will be solely for the board, and then the third set of questions will be from people who are watching at home on the YouTube channel. I'm going to come around each table individually. I'm only going to sweep the room once, so if you have got a question for the manager or for the board, that'll be your only chance to ask that question as I come around the room. Once again, anyone who's watching at home, if you've got any questions, please send them in via the Twitter or via media@rochdaleafc.co.uk. Two other people I'd also like to mention who are just sat on the staff table over there. Mr. George Delves, who's our Chief Operating Officer over there. If there's anyone with any questions for George, he's there. And also our Executive Director and Sales and Marketing Manager, Francis Fielding, are also on hand tonight if there's any questions for George or Francis. So without further ado, we'll start off with questions for the manager. I'm not going to go in any order whatsoever. Like I say, once again, questions for the board will come in the second part of the evening, but this part is solely for questions for our manager. So if we'll start with you, is there any questions on this table for our new manager? Any questions we do ask, we're going to have to use the mic so people at home can hear as well.
How much of a shock was it when Mr. Rathbone decided to leave?
I think that's a nice start. Thank you anyway. Just before we start answering those questions, I'd just like to say how welcome everybody's made me feel within the football club, both staff, players, the supporters, whenever I've bumped into you here and there in town. Been absolutely fantastic, the welcome you've given me, so I really appreciate that. Thank you. In respect to Ollie, I think it's part and parcel of a team that sometimes gets relegated, that the big, teams from higher divisions come for your better players. Ollie came to me before the Fylde game and asked if he could leave. He was only going to leave on our terms as a football club. We weren't going to be bullied into that, and Rotherham, in fairness, matched what we valued Ollie at. So we shook hands. It happens in football, players come and go. The job now is to try and replace him.
Thank you. Is there any more questions from this table, our first table for the manager?
I know you've made a couple of signings, but have you thinking about getting a goalkeeper?
Yeah.
Good.
Listen, Jay's been very good in pre-season, but I'm keen to bring players in every position. I think it's really healthy for a squad to have competition. It drives players on to perform better. The ultimate aim, if we could get there, would be 2 players for each position. That might take a little bit of time, but I think it's important to have some cover in there as well.
Thank you. Any more questions on this first table for the manager? Nope. Move on to this one. Any questions for our manager? Yep.
I think you might have just answered this one, but talking about Rathbone again, what are your plans sort of to replace him? Do you think you're going to cover it with what we've already got, or are you going to target a direct replacement?
Well, we brought George Broadbent in, who I think you'll really enjoy watching play. He's a box-to-box midfielder. Listen, he's not coming here to replace Ollie. George is his own player, but I think you'll really enjoy him. But we'll be looking to bring another midfielder in as well. So I know there's going to be loads of questions on the recruitment side, so it might be quite useful if I try and cover where I am with it. It's been a really strange pre-season to get players in. Some of the targets that we've got that should be in the building have either had to cover the parent club. So it took a while to get the 2 Sheffield United boys in because they went away with pre-season, with the international players, doing the Euros, some in the Olympics. So it just took a little bit longer than what I'd ideally liked. On the other side of that, there was a player that I want to bring in who was a forward player, something different to what we got, but he tested positive for COVID last week. So that just goes on the back burner. So it's been a really strange pre-season trying to get players in, but to be honest, we're getting there. We're seeing some progress now.
Any more questions from this table? Nope, okay. We'll move on to this table. Have we got any questions on this table for our manager? No questions on this table. This table. Any questions for our new manager?
Right, Robert, where do you see us at about Christmas time? With what we've got at the moment, we've got a wafer-thin squad. Are you gonna really go for it from the beginning, or are you going to take it sort of nice and gently?
Well, again, going back to that recruitment, we'll have more bodies in the building, no doubt about that. I've not come here to do half measures. I could have waited and got another job with one of the previous managers I've worked for, but I feel that I've done the hard yards. I've earned the opportunity to be here as your manager, representing you. I don't think I'd be doing my job properly if we went half measures and started the season slow. The aim is to be challenging at the top end of the league, and I don't think I'd be wrong in saying I'm confident that we can do that. Listen, there's no guarantees in football, but we'll be doing our best to be challenging.
A question.
In the past, the club's been really into the youth academy and the youth of the club. Is that something that's still going to continue? Because obviously that's a great income stream for the club.
100%. My background is developing players. I work my way as a coach through the youth systems. I think if you look at the record that the players I've worked with, and I'm not taking credit for them at all, but some of the players that I've helped in their journey, we can do the same here. You're right. I think the academy is a fantastic part of the football club. It's had success here before, but we want to make it even better. I wanted to get the production line even more. During pre-season, we've probably had 5 or 6 of the YTS boys training with us. Obviously, physically, they've got a little bit to go, but technically, tactically, they're very good. So it's part of the remit, I think, for a club like us to bring youth players through, and potentially that can be a sound investment for the club as well.
Any more questions on this table for the manager? Nope. We'll do the tables and we'll come to people stood up.
Would it be fair to say we'll get a more direct style of play off you than we've had in the past?
Ooh. I don't know what you used to in the past.
You must do.
I think, excuse me. I think my style of play is I want to be on the front foot. I don't see it necessary to play a backward pass if there's an option to play forward. Now that doesn't. I actually did. I did an interview for, I think it was TalkSport 2 or the EFL program, and they sort of asked me that question. I don't know if it was a bit loaded or not. It doesn't particularly matter to me if we score a goal in 3 passes or 50. It's the right pass at the right time. So where I've come from, working in the Premier League at West Brom, I was really surprised with how direct the other teams that we perceive to be really fluid football are. If you look at Liverpool play, you know, very often they're playing balls over the top for the free forwards to run onto. Man City scored a goal last year with the goalkeeper kicking it 60 yards for Sterling to knock it in on his second touch. So there's different ways to score a goal. My challenge to the players is recognise which is the right way to do it at that time.
Thank you. Any more questions for our manager on this table? Yep.
I listened to a podcast that you did with some Middlesbrough supporters a couple of months ago, and you named some of the managers you've named under, which is really impressive. And I think you worked under about 467 managers at Sunderland. Have you always...
It was more.
Have you always wanted to be a manager? It sort of came across that you'd always liked the coaching side of things, and is this something you've always wanted to do?
Yeah, it has. I think everyone has aspirations to be the best they can. I said before, I feel I've done the hard yards. I started coaching at Grimsby Town, doing their academy, with very little funding to run the academy. They were actually a National League team at the time. Had relative success at that, and then moved to Sunderland, and you're quite right, worked under some fantastic managers, both as a youth coach and within the senior environment. I think everybody wants to challenge themselves, and this is certainly going to be a challenge, no doubt about it, but I've got the right staff around me. I've got hopefully a club that's on the up in terms of, it's quite unique that the supporters in essence own the club, and I feel a very big responsibility to give you a team that you can enjoy coming to watch. Whether we win, lose or draw, I'd like to think regardless you're going to go away thinking they've had a good go there today.
Thank you. Any more questions for our manager on this table? Nope. Any questions for the manager on this table? Nope. All right. This table, the manager.
I've heard some really, really positive things about training and the way you've changed the training setup of people that have observed you. Are you happy with our current training facilities, and do you think it's good enough to take this club forward?
Well, it's very kind that you mentioned about the training. I've got a fantastic group of staff. Jimmy Shan has come in with me, who's had a very similar journey and background in developing players and working at the senior side, so that's great. A training ground is something that myself and Simon have spoke about before. At the moment, it's absolutely fine. You know, there's no issues with that, but I think for a club, and this might take time, for a club, I think a training ground moving forward would be really useful, really beneficial, both to have academy and first team on the same site, but to try and attract players as well.
Thank you. Any more questions on this table? No. Yeah.
Hi, Robbie. Just asking about your assistant manager, Jimmy Shan. He's not the obvious manager's best mate that we normally get here. What can you tell us about him, please?
So, Jimmy, first and foremost, he's a fantastic guy and a brilliant coach. I think the sessions that we've put on for the players, they've enjoyed. It's challenged them. But Jimmy brings with him a wealth of experience as well. So he's worked at West Brom, Aston Villa. He's been a manager in his own right at Solihull and Kidderminster. So he knows that level as better than I do, to be perfectly honest. So I've known Jimmy since the coaching badges, probably about 7 years ago when we were both on our pro licence. And we've just kind of kept in touch. When I got he was instantly my first choice. It's happened, but it's like you me. What we do where I'm constantly trying to just still be for 8-1, being in the gym.
Question.
Goals, mainly quite a few from set plays. Is that something like your list of priorities to address for the forthcoming season?
Yeah, good question. Set plays are a major part of football. And, you know, both attacking and defensively, you have to be very good in both boxes. That's where most games are won and lost. The boys have been telling me that they did struggle with set plays, particularly in the first part of last year. So it's something that, as a manager, that you need to address and get better at, like all aspects of the game. But it's certainly a major part of the game that will be taken very seriously, yeah.
Thank you. Is there any more questions from anybody standing before we move on to the board? No. We are expecting a few questions from people at home. There's one more. We'll just pick up this one.
Hi, Robbie. I've noticed that you've worked under David Moyes and Steve Bruce. Is there any chance we could be ending up with players from Newcastle or West Ham? Put you on the spot.
I haven't worked with Steve. I have worked with his assistants, Steve Agnew and Stephen Clements. I have spoke to David about a couple of players, but they're not letting that. Exactly the same scenario. Obviously, you can imagine all the top Premier League clubs, they're only getting back their senior players now, really, or this week. So it's been difficult to get players out of those clubs. But no, I've been in touch with David potentially about a couple of players. See if they can do us a favour, you know, just ship them up here for nothing, and exactly, yeah. I'll mention it again to him.
Thank you. I think that's all the questions from everybody in the room. Obviously, if anyone's watching at home and got questions, Leanna and Greg, our media team, are watching them questions, and we'll ask them at the end. So can we have a massive round of applause, please, for our new manager ahead of an exciting new season, Robbie Stockdale. A little bit later on, we're going to move on to any questions that may have been sent in via Twitter or email. But the next part of the evening is going to be any questions you've got for the board. We've got members of the board who've been with us for a while. We've got new members of the board. We've got the chairman. And obviously, we've got our first ever supporters trust director as well. So if you've got any questions, once again, I'm going to come to each table individually, and then the people stood up at the back. If you've got any questions for any member of our top table, we've done the manager, but any of the board, please, now is your chance to do it. So we'll start at this table again. Any questions, lads? All clear, that's good. On this one. Any questions for the top table for the board?
In recent months, there's been a lot of speculation about shares, people buying and selling them. I know you can go online, Companies House, and see who is currently shareholders, but could the club put together some sort of list so the fans can actually see where the shares are now?
Well, I think, unfortunately, it's data protection, which means we can't issue the share list as such, but I understand the Supporters Trust have got quite a good understanding of the latest shareholders, and there's plenty of them in the club, which is a great thing being a fan-owned club, but the downside of that is that, unfortunately, quite a lot of the shares belong to quite a few people, and
yourself who owns the shares.
Yeah. So what are you wanting the club to publish that?
Well, could you not give the fans just a bit more of a guidance where they can actually see where the shares are? That's all it is, just to make it a bit clearer to people who has what, because a lot of people probably don't know.
You mean the percentages? Yeah. Once you find
Yeah, it's a difficult one. We'll look into that. But as I found out quite quickly here, there's so many rules that we have to comply with, both from the EFL and data protection. So we'll certainly get George to look at that and see if we're able to do it. But I don't know a definitive answer on it, I'm afraid.
Thank you. Is there any more questions on this table? Okay with that? If we move on to this table here, have we got any questions for the top table, for the board, from this table? Anybody?
Yeah. On the 7th of July...
Sorry, if you could just talk into the mic for people at home.
Oh, thank you. On the 7th of July, the EFL was still to receive any evidence of the source and sufficiency of funding on behalf of any potential purchaser. Also, the club was yet to submit the necessary future financial information. What can you tell us about any development on that?
Well, as far as the club are concerned, we've received absolutely nothing whatsoever on any sale of shares, anything. I've had shareholders report to us that they've been approached to sell their shares, which is how we came about knowing about this in the first place. But certainly, from our point of view, we've received nothing. So we've not had any share transfer form whatsoever placed in front of the board asking to sign that. Now, to purchase shares in a football club, there's a process that you have to go through. Normally, that would be that any potential buyer would approach the club, say they're interested in buying shares in the club. They then submit their plans for the club, so how they're going to buy the shares, how they project future finances of the club to carry on. And normally the club would be on board with this, so they'd work with them to get all this information, present it to the EFL, and the EFL would then deem them to be a fit and proper person to own a football club. What's happened in our case here, as far as we can tell, is that the people trying to buy shares in the club have totally disregarded the EFL rules on passing the ownership tests, so therefore are purchasing the shares, or attempting to purchase the shares, as we believe, without the requisite approvals from the EFL. So those two things is an unprecedented situation, really. So those two things then work together. So as a club, if we're then presented with a share transfer form from these purchasers trying to buy the shares, and we approve that share transfer, because they haven't got the approvals from the EFL, we'll be in breach of EFL rules, and the club will then become into disciplinary dispute with the EFL and risk sanctions. So we've had legal advice to say that's something that we're entitled not to do. So that's our stance. We won't be, as long as there are no EFL approvals in place, we will not be signing any share transfer forms that have to be submitted under the Articles of Association of the club. Does that answer your question? Sorry, I've rabbled on there.
Where's the money coming from?
Very good question. I don't know.
Neither do I. No.
And obviously, as a board, we've tried to do our due diligence on it, and there's no obvious place where the money comes from, and the financial plans that have been submitted to the EFL from the potential buyers now that have been submitted, we don't believe bear much resemblance to reality.
So we don't know where the money's coming from, and we're both broke. Where do we stand then with the this idea of bringing this director on board for this issue with shares with fans and directors and fans, directors, and anybody else that might be interested? Where do we stand with that?
So, as a club and as a board, we'd like to do a share issue. So the new directors, including us here, can buy more shares in the club and raise money for the club. We'd like fans to be able to buy shares in the club. There seems to be a demand for it, and people wanting to really take control of the fan ownership issue. The problem that we have at the minute is we're unable to do that because there's a great chunk of shares in the club that appear to be in a transaction status. So what we don't want to do, well, for one thing, we don't know what we'll be able to get through an EGM regards to the share quantities that we're able to sell and at what ratios. And we want to be very careful that if somebody's owning a percentage of the club, that we don't give them the opportunity to own a greater percentage of the club by doing a share issue.
Yeah, I'm getting quite alarmed now because all I can see is debt mounting. I can see massive from the manager saying, I want money for these players, and you're going to turn round to him and say it isn't available. I'm going to see it from every other section of the club coming in saying we want money to develop this, and you're going to turn around and say there isn't any, and all the time the debt's going to increase. I reckon it's about 2 million now. Is it about right? Is it 2 million about right, or is it more?
No, that's quite nowhere near as bad as that.
Nowhere near as bad as that.
And we've got a very robust business plan that we've submitted to the EFL of our way forward over the next 12 months, and it meets all the EFL guidelines, and we're in quite a healthy state if it wasn't for this attempted takeover and the financial consequences that could have on the club.
Thank you.
Thank you. Another question on this table.
Yeah, and just to clarify, in terms of existing shares, if a shareholder A sells to shareholder B, no money comes to the club. It's just a transfer from one individual to another.
Yeah, this is the frustrating thing about the situation at the moment, that the club aren't involved in it. We have absolutely no... It's like it's just selling and buying anything. So it doesn't involve
the only
the
part
club.
the club have is an expense of administration where the share sale is of large enough quantity to concern the EFL and the rules about control of football clubs. And
Yes, so once somebody exceeds 30%, the EFL deem that as taking control of a club.
Thank you. Any more questions from this table before we move on to the next one? Nope. Any questions for the board of directors from this table? Nope. This table?
Given that our previous manager has to be released from his contract, and within a day it was a widely known fact that he was going to take over at Man City under 23s, will there be any compensation coming to us from Man City, or will we get nothing because we released him?
Well, there'll be no compensation coming from the manager situation, but it was probably about 3 or 4 weeks before he got put in position on that. I've got on record as sort of, I'll go through again the sequence of events on that, in that, no, so we didn't know he'd gone to City when we released him from his contract, but I think it's well publicised that he had another year on his contract that had quite high financial implications for us if things didn't work out this season. So that was one risk to the business moving forward. Brian came to us, or Brian's agent out of the blue asked for a Zoom meeting and said to us basically that would we like to buy him out of his contract at that time, which we declined and said we're 100% behind him and looking forward to the season, and let's all work together. And then, I can't remember, Jamie, was it 24, 48 hours later, he came back to us and said, but actually, just to clarify, at the end of that conversation, we said, however, if he's not as 100% committed to the club as we are to him, then we want to know about it and we can talk. And he came back and said he wasn't 100% committed to the club from that point forward. So we agreed to release him for his contract. Now, it's quite easy in hindsight to say he's gone to Manchester City and we could have got compensation for him. Equally, we could have been 6 weeks into the season, bottom of the league, and had a huge financial amount hanging over us. So it's a matter of trying to balance all those things up. And at the time, we thought that was the best thing for the club. And certainly, we're very happy with the position we're in on the football side of things at the minute, with Robbie coming on board and the changes that have been made on the football front. And we feel very positive about that going into the new season. So there's arguments of what you could have done this, you could have done that better, but at the end of it, we're absolutely delighted where we are on the footballing side of things at the minute and looking forward to the season.
Thank you. Any more questions on this table? Yep.
A few weeks ago, we were informed of the wonderful gesture that Director Andrew Kelly made in conjunction with the Supporters Trust and the Davy Clough estate to transfer some shares to the Supporters Trust and increase their shareholding. In the light of what you've said about share transfers not going through, has that share transfer actually taken place?
It's difficult for us to comment on that because that's the subject to some legal wranglings at the moment. So I want to try and be as honest and frank with people, but that is under a legal proceedings at the moment, so I'm unable to comment on it.
Any more questions from this table? Yep.
What's happened with Lee Riley?
Well, yeah, go on, you go for it.
So, as part of my staff, I think it's important that I get to bring the people that I need to bring in to help me in my job. I had Lee was fantastic for me in the first week. Was ever so helpful, ever so professional. We had an honest conversation that I wanted to bring Jimmy along to be my assistant manager. We shook hands. We've had conversations since, and Lee is in the process of leaving the club. I think that's fair to say, Simon. Yeah. Yeah. We're still on very friendly terms. He knew when Brian left that it was probably going to happen. I've been in this situation many a time before. I'd like to think that I did it in a better way than what's happened to me in the past, and that was I was very conscious of doing it properly because he's been a fantastic servant to the club. So absolutely no hard feelings, hopefully from both sides, but it's just football, and he'll move on to something else, no doubt.
Thank you. Any more questions on this table? Yeah. Okay. We'll come back to the people standing in a minute, but just any questions on this first table on this side? No, you're all right. Any questions from this table for the board? No, you're all right, yeah. And the last table here, any questions, lads? One there, yeah.
This is one for all the directors. Obviously, there's been the sort of hostile takeover attempts in the recent weeks. Are you guys worried? Because as fans, we've been worried. And is there anything that we as fans, aside from not selling shares, that we can do to sort of assist in this not happening?
Cheers. If I answer that one first, yes, I am worried. Firstly, for the reasons that I've already said, that if somebody acquires over 30% of the shares in the club, the EFL deem that as being taking control of the club, and it gets us into all sorts of regulatory difficulties with the EFL. We want this, we all join the board to be a fan-owned club, and we're not happy with the due diligence we've done on the people that are buying the club. We've had a meeting with them, and we're not totally convinced we're told 100% truths all the time. So yes, we are worried. As for what fans can do, it's been absolutely amazing how everyone's pulled together on this issue, and I'm sure they'd have control of the club now if it wasn't for everybody working together and shareholders not taking the big money that's reportedly being offered now for shares and sticking together. And I don't think if things carry on as they will, they'll ever get to 50% of the club, which is their clear target. So just stay strong, please, and don't sell shares to these people, because it won't be for the good of the club going forward. As I mentioned previously, we feel quite bullish about our financial position and the business plan going forward and the footballing side of things, and everything seems to be going really well. Everyone's pulling together and there's a real togetherness at the club. So we from that side of things, very optimistic, but this attempted takeover is putting a real dampener on things. So yeah, that's where we are. I don't know who else wants to comment on
that. That is loud. Yeah, I'm worried too. I'm losing sleep over it, and I'm really annoyed as well, frankly. After the AGM and EGM, we plotted a new path and created a new strategy. We brought some brilliant and passionate directors on board, and we fashioned a plan. And after a tough year last year, financially and on the pitch, we were really starting to charge out of the blocks for this year. We've got a sound business plan and a really positive way forward. And through a period of uncertainty as well, I know a number of you are sitting there thinking, shall I buy a season ticket? We're going to be able to get in the ground because of COVID. Now we're going to have something hostile going on. You guys have backed as well. You've backed us. 1,600 season tickets sold already. I'd love to think there's quite a few more to come as well. And we want to pack the rafters for now because strength, financial strength and supporter strength will help get us through this. But what's going on is just not logical. I can't figure out why they're doing this and what their next move is. And we're having to react quite fleet of foot. We're talking almost daily, and we're talking closely with the Supporters Trust as well, who I absolutely applaud for everything they're doing as well, because they're really getting behind everything. We just need to find a way through it. You'll probably think we're knee-jerking, and that's because a lot of the new things are emerging all the time, and we're fighting on all sorts of fronts. But working closely with the EFL, and George is doing an incredible job liaising back with the EFL as well. We'll try and find a way through this. And so hopefully we're going to come out of this in a real position of strength with a real Loctite supporters trust, great support from the supporters, and a really positive start on the pitch. So that's what I'm looking forward to. That may change, and when it does, we'll react. We'll signal from ourselves and through the supporters trust what to do, and we'll figure it out. And hopefully we can fight this one off.
Thank you. I'm just with a gentleman now. I'm going to ask a question on behalf of him, who's a friend of David Clough's, and he's just asking what's happening with the scoreboard. I'm not sure if Francis wants to answer that.
Is that on? Yeah. Good evening, everybody. We've been equally frustrated with the delay with the scoreboard, because obviously we purchased it several months ago with David Clough's funds, and it's just been sat in a warehouse in Blackpool waiting to be installed. But the reason for the delay is because originally the scoreboard was going to be hang on the front of the reside stand. So we had to get a structural engineering to approve that, and he wasn't satisfied that the stand could actually bear the weight of the screen. So we had to go back to Rochdale Council and obtain architectural plans from the original stand when it was built, and he kept coming backwards and forwards. And in the end, we had to back down really and agree that it's going to be moved now, and it's now going to be located between the Smith Metal stand and the reside stand. So I am pleased to say that the groundworks have been completed this week. We've had to get the steelworks produced. So they're coming to install the steelworks next week, and the screen will be installed on Thursday of next week, but it does leave it very, very tight for Saturday's game. We have recruited a scoreboard operator who I feel so sorry for, because he's going to have to get to grips with the new system. But all the graphics, everything is ready to go. It looks really exciting. So just please bear with us, because we're doing everything that we can to have it up for next Saturday's game. If there are delays, it really is, and it has been out of our hands. but it has been bought. It's ready. It's ready to go up. So fingers crossed, we will be ready for next Saturday.
Some smiles down here. Now, has that answered your question? Yeah, yeah, no problem at all. Any question, lads, for the board? No. Any questions for anyone stood up yet?
Hi. To start with, I'd just like to thank all the directors, especially the new ones coming on board at this time. It's a real baptism of fire for you. It is appreciated what you're doing, and you've made some great employment decisions so far as well, both incoming and otherwise. And it wouldn't be Rochdale Football Club without rumour mills. And one of the rumours that fans are talking about is that the club has submitted a report to the FA about discriminatory comments being made by these prospective investors. Can you comment on that? Is it true?
Yeah. Yeah, so the club has made a complaint to the FA regarding what we regarded as discriminatory and belittling comments and abusive at times as well. So that has gone in, but I can't really give more details on that at this time.
Well, if I can. That they have accused the board of directors as being Nancy boys, that Rochdale folk were small-minded people, and that the prospective investors would be quite happy to resolve these differences in a boxing ring.
As I said, I can't really comment on that, but if those comments were made, would probably regard them as being discriminatory and belittling comments that would probably make a report onto the FA, yes.
So I think we'll leave that one there then. Any more questions yet?
Hi, I just want to go back to the potential investors and their share transfer forms. You said earlier that no share transfer forms had been signed off by the club, which infers to me that no share transfers have been made, and therefore, as we stand, they don't own any percentage of the shares of the club. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
It's just that it conflicts with some people.
Yeah, so
30%, and
so,
that triggers the EFL.
Yeah, so there's a legal process to go through to. This is, as I understand it, trying now to remember all the legal advice that we've had over the last few weeks. So there's a process that goes through. So I understand that there's been legal transactions that have taken place to agree to buy the shares, and even the power of attorney to vote on those shares has been obtained, even if the actual share transfer hasn't occurred yet.
Okay, and that leads me on to the second part, which is, if at the moment they don't have any ownership of shares, would it not be prudent to try and hold an EGM to issue the unissued shares at the club so that the supporters, of whom I know many are willing and waiting to invest, can buy them and protect the club further?
Yeah, no, this comes to the problem that I think that we have with them, in that there's a legal agreement, as we understand it, in place where they have the power of attorney, i.e. they vote on those shares, and the money's possibly held in trust to complete the purchase of those shares. So in effect, although they haven't registered the shares on the share register, they have at the moment all the power of those shares as we understand it. Though I'll stress again, we haven't seen anything.
It's also possible that they have an agreement with the people they're purchasing shares from, that if an issue went forward, they would then front that for them. So it's quite possible that major shareholders would still buy the additional shares and then pass them on. So that's likely to be in the agreement.
Okay, and one final thing is, where did they get the information, the personal information from, to contact the selling shareholders? Do we know?
No, we don't know the answer to that question.
Okay, thank you. Is there any more questions from the top table from anyone stood up? Yeah, no. Oh, sorry.
We're playing Harrogate on Saturday. How many tickets did they allocate us? And is there any chance of an additional allocation for Tuesday night for the cup game?
Thank you. I think we can safely say the whole Harrogate thing's been an additional headache this week that we could well have done without. So I think it was about 2:00 this afternoon or mid-afternoon today that we got told that we could have tickets, and I believe there were 645 allocated that sold out, unfortunately, within 45 minutes. We can make a request to Harrogate to get more tickets, but the problem that... Sorry. The problem is that I suspect that we'll reach on this is that... I'll let George answer this.
Just to follow up with Simon, Francis and I have been on the phone with Harrogate probably a million times this week. It's been we've never come off the phone to them, but their issue is their safety advisory group. They've made some changes to the ground, apparently. The safety advisory group weren't happy with. They've had to have a test event on Sunday against Doncaster Rovers. As a lot of you know, that was home fans only, so there was no away fans permitted to attend that game. Under the conditions of their safety certificate at the minute, the allocation that Simon alluded to is all they're allowed to allocate. Obviously, it's a very small ground anyway. Some of you may have been already. I know it'll be a new ground for a lot of you. I've been on numerous occasions. It's quite a tight, compact ground. That is all we've been allocated. Unfortunately, we can't get any more under the conditions of their safety certificate. Our stance, to answer probably a follow-up question before it gets asked, was that we had basically communicated to Harrogate and the EFL that we weren't happy to play the game in the absence of away supporters. If it was home fans only, we would have insisted on it being behind closed doors. It was a little bit late in the day to offer to reverse the game. We would have been happy to reverse the game with enough notice. Some of you might have seen Sutton United, for example, have had to reverse their first few games due to laying their pitch. So we understand it's been a complete mess. We would apologise if there was anything within our control that we had done, but I assure you that particularly Jan and her team in the ticket office have been working incredibly hard to get this resolved. They were supposed to even drop us physical tickets over last night that they pulled out over the last minute. So we stayed here till 7:00 last night to wait for tickets to physically get dropped off so we could sell today, and they still never turned up then. So there's been loads of stuff going on with it that obviously we'd have liked to communicate early that we couldn't, but we have, particularly, like I said, Jan and her team in the ticket office have worked incredibly hard. Unbelievable to sell out within 45 minutes, that volume of tickets. So hopefully that's signs of great things to come from an away support over the course of the season. I've not been fortunate enough to attend a Dale game with away fans yet, so I'm looking forward to seeing what the away support's like on Saturday, as I'm sure the board and Robbie are as well.
Thank you. Is there any more questions for the board?
I'm interested to know when the tickets for Tuesday's game may be available.
I think it's Francis, tomorrow morning, is it? Yeah, we're setting up at the minute, so it has to be set up as an event on the ticketing software. So Francis and Jan are working on it at the minute, so we're looking at 12:00 tomorrow, hopefully.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Yep.
Yeah, mention you made a David Clough earlier on. Now, I wasn't a goal bond agent, but I know a lot of people who were. And when we stopped doing the goal bond, it's upset quite a lot of those agents. And it also took a lot of the presence of Rochdale Football Club out of the community, pubs. A lot of people I know were paying into the goal bond who basically got no real connection with Rochdale, but they were happy to pay the £1 a week. Now, I don't know how the replacement's actually faring. Can you give us some idea of whether it's actually worked or whether there's some way of looking at going back? Because obviously the goal bond agents work very hard. They obviously got the rewards through cheap season tickets and such. But it would be nice to know how it's actually faring now compared to how it was then.
Yeah, I can answer that question for you. It's obviously been very difficult transition really because of COVID, and our lottery was run with agents. We had over 150 hard-working agents who collected money door to door every single week for the football club. And then obviously when COVID happened, We wasn't allowed to do that. It wasn't safe to send agents out. We wasn't allowed to collect cash. And because the majority of our members all paid by cash, we had to suspend the lottery. So we wasn't able to bring any revenue into the football club through our lottery because it wasn't legal with the number of players that paid by direct debit. So we did work very hard last summer to do a marketing campaign and try and encourage members to convert to payment via direct debit. And that was successful. So the lottery at the moment is currently running by direct debit subscriptions only. We only restarted it in August last year. And in the first 3 quarters, we've made a profit of over £20,000, which is quite remarkable considering that we've gone from 0 members and converting all of those to direct debit and actually making a profit. I know I said at the last fans forum we wouldn't rule out going back to door-to-door collections, and these restrictions have only just been lifted very recently. What we're doing, we're just taking it step by step. So when we play Scunthorpe next week, we will be returning to the 50-50 draw with sellers inside the ground. Whilst we've been playing behind closed doors, we ran the 50-50 draw successfully, all online again, and we was averaging around £500 every game. But we think we can improve that. So we are going to be bringing the sellers back. So it's just on a step-by-step basis, but our target is to achieve £100,000 profit from Dale Lotto over 12 months. It won't be this 12 months, but that's the target where we want to get to. So if and when we can bring agents back, because I know there's a lot of agents who'd love to go back out collecting, we will look to do that.
Yeah, I appreciate that, but I think we lost an opportunity because obviously we had the agents. They knew who all those people were that were handing the money out. And I think we lost an awful lot of people by just basically stopping it and not giving the agents a chance to sign them up by direct debit. I think that would have been probably a better way to go about it. But anyway, I think that ship sailed, hasn't it?
Thank you. Okay, yeah. Any questions, lads? No. I think that brings us to the end of the questions for the board. The next part of the evening is going to be questions we've had from people at home. We had questions from people at home, Leanne. Just a few. Okay, if you could just give us 5 minutes time, we're going to collate the questions that we've had from people watching at home who've sent questions in by email and Twitter, and we'll put them all together and it'll be like a quick fire round really at the top table. So if you could just give us 5 minutes while we get it ready, we'll come back and finish the rest of the questions off. Thank you. Okay, we've had quite a few questions in, so we're going to resume in about a minute's time. If you want to take your seats again, we'll go through the questions that have been asked by people online. I think we're just waiting for Jamie and Murray now. If we can have the back up to the front, please. And is Murray about anywhere from the Trust, please? No problem. Okay, so thank you to everyone who has sent a message in, who's been watching at home on YouTube. We're going to go through as many of them as we can. A lot of the questions have been similar questions, so obviously we're not going to ask them a load of times. And a lot of the questions about the shares have already been answered tonight, so we're going to swerve a few of them, the ones that have already been answered. But the ones that haven't been touched upon, we are going to throw straight at the top table in no order whatsoever. They are exactly how they've come in, so I'll leave it to you, gentlemen, to decide who's going to answer the questions unless it's aimed at one of you specifically. Tony Hughes has sent a question in. This will be for the manager. Have you got a preferred formation or will you change it to suit the opposition?
Well, no, in general, I won't be changing against the opposition. I think it's important that we always look to have the best players in the right positions. That just seems common sense to me. We've been playing 4-3-3 all through pre-season, trying to put the philosophy that I want in place. Formations are important, but it's not the most important thing. It's your application and your decision makings on the pitch. But I think we've got to be adaptable and have a couple of different things up our sleeve, but it won't be necessarily dependent on who we're playing.
Thank you. One from Richard, another one for the manager. Will your relationship with former managers and larger clubs help us in recruitment, or are you happy that you can identify players that you've never worked with before?
Bit of both, really. So obviously, I'm big friends with Paul Heckingbottom at Sheffield United. I was his assistant manager at Hibs. So straight away, when I got the job, Paul recommended the two boys from there. I've watched them. You know, I'd never just go on the recommendation. I do my homework on the players as well. When I first met Simon and the rest of the board, I had a list of potential players I'd like to bring in, having already seen the squad from last year and who was left. And I think we've started pretty strong on the players that were on that list, to be honest. And fingers crossed, there's got to be some more coming in over the next day or so.
Thank you. Jacob says, welcome to the club, Robbie.
Cheers.
Did you or have you watched any of our games from last season? If so, what learnings did you take from them going into this season?
Yes, I did. Of course I did. It was important that I started to see what the players were capable of. And, you know, it'd be very easy for me to sit here and criticise what's gone in the past. I'm sure people that have replaced me in jobs could do the same thing. My view is we try and look forward. The one thing I think is important is that we don't concede as many goals. You know, that's again, it just makes sense to me to limit the chances that the opposition have. And it's no criticism of anybody else. I've got my own way of doing things, and hopefully that works. If it doesn't, and somebody else is sat here, then they'll say the same thing. But yeah, I watched all the games. I watched a dozen or so, yeah.
Thank you. A question for the chairman from Daniel Richardson. Has the manager been provided with the budget that will equip us to achieve success in League Two?
I look forward to this answer, Sam.
Yes. No, to be fair, obviously we're a club that we're never going to have the top budget in the league, but we're nowhere near the bottom budget in the league either. We've been quite open and transparent from the first interview with Robbie, what he'll be working with, and hopefully he's reasonably happy with that, and we can be reasonably competitive on that budget as well.
Thank you. I'm not sure who wants to answer this question from Greg. Will the club be looking to appoint a sporting director this season as previously advertised? Not sure who wants to answer that.
I think the view is probably at the moment that a sporting director is a luxury rather than a essential, and we'd rather perhaps put the money into players than a sporting director. So what we're trying to do is have a structure amongst the board to try and the staff at the club to support Robbie as much as we can without the need of a sporting director, so we can put funds where we think they need to go, really.
Hope that answers your question there,
Oh,
Greg.
yeah. And I suppose the other thing to say there is that Robbie does have a mentor in Sammy Lee as well that's joined the club and working, so he does get a little bit more support that we're not paying for.
A question for the Trust Director, Mr. Murray Knight. This one's for you, Murray. How have you felt being welcomed into directorship, and so you feel going... I think that should say, how do you feel going forwards? Is the role to remain positive, and how can it be effective on behalf of the fans within the arena?
Sorry, could you say that again?
It says, how have you felt? How have you felt being welcomed into directorship, and how do you feel that this role going forwards can be positive on behalf of the fans within the arena?
Well, the first thing I'd say is that it's a new experience for the Trust and myself. So it's been interesting. I would say challenging, because, you know, you've got the perfect storm. We've got a situation where we're not the most wealthiest club in the world, but we've also got the strength to be able to fight against things that are unwelcome. And I'd just like to say that the help that the Trust have had from so many individuals who are not Trust members, but who have been able to lend their support in the way of information on the background of the people who are trying to take over the club. We're finding out through them some information which is really, really important. And we just hope that by supplying the EFL with that information, that will be taken account when they make their decision as to the viability and of the individuals on the owners and directors test. In the future, what I'd like to say is that we don't have me as a Trust director on the board just as a symbol. It's actually a position where I represent the Trust and the members and fans. So if anybody has any questions, any points they want to raise, you know, I'm there to answer them. And if I can't answer them, I'll find out and get back to you. So take advantage of the fact you've got a rep on the board, because I'm not used to having an easy time. You know, we've never had an easy time on the Trust. So it's nothing new getting awkward questions. So please take advantage of the fact that you've got somebody there fighting your case. I find it an open door. I've been made very welcome by the rest of the directors. A situation where I'm involved all the time, whether I want to or not. But that's another story. But I've been made very welcome. I've been involved, and I really, respect the fact that there will be times where I'm not able to give answers to some of the questions that you ask because they are confidential. So if you can remember that, but if you don't ask, you won't get an answer. So please take advantage of it. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Murray. I think you've answered a lot of questions there as well. And once again, if anyone's in the room and you haven't joined the Trust yet, you can do tonight just over by the Dale Trust banner over there. The next question will be for either the chairman or Tony, I think. Ant says, how perilous were the club finances when you took control?
Interesting. When who took control? Because the finances are constantly perilous here. You'll probably remember me presenting at a previous fans forum about where's all the bloody money gone, and we struggle every year to make ends meet. Back in year 1920, financial year 1920, we did come back from a net loss the previous year to a profit of about 1.35 million, which and that was despite actually the start of COVID taking out some of the revenues at the back end of the season. We worked very hard through last season to make sure that the cash didn't run out. We took a number of countermeasures. So the council helped us out with a loan. We took some bounce back loans from the banks, and we've got agreements for paying those all back over a measured period of time. And we also agreed a number of time to pay agreements with HMRC as well, supported actually by our local MPs writing into Rishi and making sure that we've got air cover there. So we know commercially last year we made a loss. We're still doing the books at the moment. It's not surprising we made a loss because our revenues were chopped significantly, and it's probably a similar loss to the profit we made the year before. But as we signed off the accounts for 1920, the accountants were, because they could see the headwinds and the problems we were had through last year, made us go through quite a hefty exercise to prove we were still commercially viable and we could trade through the next 18 months. So we had to provide to them a plan and a cash flow forecast to show that we were a viable business, and the EFL were interested too to make sure that we had a plan. So we've submitted that, and that's been under scrutiny. We're currently executing against that plan. Season ticket sales are going to plan. We've had some signings, some sales, obviously, that have helped the coffers and help us get through. And we are working on a business interruption insurance claim as well, which if that comes through, that will really bolster the cash. And of course, we've then got the potential share offer later in the year to help us as funds might dwindle again, assuming nothing else happens from the hostile perspective. The other good news is now we've bolstered the board a little bit further. We have a finance committee rather than it just sort of falling to one person. So Richard, to my left, is on the finance committee, been extremely helpful and diligent, and raking through our expenditure to make sure that we are getting value for money, or indeed where we can turn off the taps that we do so. And of course, Nick Grinrod is helping us as the company accountant as well. So there's three of us kind of bearing the load with Simon watching over as well, and others contributing from time to time too. So we're taking it carefully. As Simon said, we've set a competitive budget this year. We probably had a lower budget last year. Comparatively in the league this year, we've set a competitive budget there, so give ourselves a fighting chance on the pitch. But it's always tight and it's always tough. So we're not sitting on bucket loads of cash, as people sometimes do allude. So every penny counts. So please do buy your season tickets, do buy your match tickets, do buy the shirt, and when the share offer comes along, if that's something that you can get involved in, we'd really love you to do so. And let's keep Rochdale on that firm financial footing. We don't have a wealthy owner who's going to just drop cash on us like the Eisners did at Portsmouth, for instance. We have to make ends meet year on year. But we think we can do that if we operate prudently and we get your backing. And I'm sure we've got your backing at the moment. You'll really feel it. So let's continue on that front.
Thank you. The next question is for the manager from Tom. And Tom says, is Robbie looking to bring in any more permanent signings as well as the loan signings?
Yeah, I am. I'm looking to bring in some experience to help the team as well. I think it's really important that we use the loan signings as best we can. I'm getting a calibre of player that I probably couldn't afford if it wasn't for the loans. So I don't know if you're aware how the loans, I've managed to structure them, but we get them basically for cheap of what their basic wage is, because we'll help them develop. So there's a benefit to the club for us, but it's also a benefit to the parent club that they get the experience of working with us, playing games at senior level. But to the first question, yeah, of course, we're looking to bring some permanent signings in as well.
Thank you. And another question for the manager from Luke, and it says, out of the playing squad, who have you been most impressed with so far?
The players might be watching. Yeah, all of them. There's some very talented players. I think that's the most exciting part for me. And I reiterate, I want to bring good people to the club as well. I'm not interested in bringing big-time Charlies or anything like that. They've got to fit in to what was already in the building. So within that, I'm going to dodge the question of who's really impressed me, because I think we've had some very impressive performances in pre-season. And hopefully they're impressing when we play Harrogate on Saturday.
And another question from Jacob. It says, do you see Ethan Briley playing a big part this season?
Ethan's a very talented player. He's trained with us every day. He's got minutes on the pitch. So certainly there's the physical side of the game that Ethan will just naturally develop as he grows and does his work. But certainly if he warrants a place in the team, he'll play.
And another one, I think you sort of answered this before, but it's been sent in, so we'll ask it. Another one for the manager from Gavin. Realistically, what are your ambitions for your first season with us?
So, realistically, I reiterate, I've not come here to play second fiddle to anybody else in the league. I want to be competitive. I'm not making false promises that we're going to smash the league and win it by a country mile. Of course I'm not. But I think it's up to us to be competitive on the pitch. So you've been away from the stadium for so long. It would be wrong of us not to give our all to try and be successful for you.
Thank you. And a message, the Norwegian Rochdale Football Club supporters group have been in touch just to wish Robert and all the players the best for the season.
Thank you very much.
And I think we might be on to the last one. It's from unknown. Somebody sent this without a name in. I'm not sure who wants to answer this one. It says, the kiosks were closed for the friendlies. Will they be reopened for the first league game of the season and going forward?
That's definitely not my question, is it?
Yes, they will be open, and we're changing the supplier in the kiosks, and it's a very good day to ask that question, actually, because there was a big sample of pies and kebabs and a massive feast that we had this morning put on at the club to try all the new fare going in the kiosks. So, yeah, we changed the supplier. It's one of the areas we've looked at the club where we want to try and be more profitable and generate more revenue from the club. And we very much view the kiosks as being part of the match day experience. And we think this season people will actually get to the ground early to have some lunch at the ground from the kiosk because the food will be that good. But we'll wait and see what everyone thinks on the first game of the season, but they'll definitely be open.
I turned up a little bit late, but everyone was talking about them, and apparently these new pies are amazing. I think that brings us to the end. Leanne, is that the last question? Yeah, thank you. Thank you to everyone who's been watching at home, and of course everyone who's come down to the Radcliffe Bar tonight. A massive thank you to Director Jamie Sarsfield, the Supporters Trust elected Director Murray Knight, our Manager Robbie Stockdale, our Chairman Simon Gage, our Director Tony Pockney, and of course our other Director Richard Knight, and of course over there as well George Delves, who's been answering questions, who's our Chief Operating Officer, and our Executive Director and Sales and Marketing Manager, Francis Fielding. But thank you to everyone who has joined us tonight, both in the Radcliffe Bar and at home, and we can't wait to see you back here for the first game next season. But I think on behalf of everyone here at Rochdale Football Club, thank you and good night.